I didn't know it at the time, but everything I loved was being sold right out from under me. It all started when I got the call. I was stationed overseas, far away from home. The military wasn't exactly a cakewalk, but I was doing my job, staying focused, trying to make something of myself. My wife, Emily, had always been supportive. At least that's what I thought. But one day, out of the blue, I got a message from a mutual friend back home. The message read, "Man, I can't believe what's happening. You need to check your account." I didn't know what he was talking about, but I figured it was just some kind of mistake, maybe a glitch in my banking app. But when I logged in, I felt my heart drop into my stomach. There, staring back at me on the screen, was a transaction. A large one. And next to it was something I never thought I'd see. Sale of property. My car. My pride and joy. The car I had saved up for years to buy. The one I'd always dreamed of owning. Gone. Sold for pennies. To someone I didn't even recognize. I tried to stay calm. I thought, maybe she's just trying to make ends meet. Maybe Emily needed some extra cash, and I wasn't there to help. But when I called her, her voice cracked with something I didn't like. Something that sounded a lot like guilt. "I'm just taking care of things here," she said quickly, avoiding my questions. "Don't worry about it." But then I found out more. The next day, I received a picture on my phone. I wish I could say it was something simple, like a photo from our old family album. But it wasn't. It was a picture of Emily, my wife, on the couch of our house. But she wasn't alone. Sitting next to her, arm around her shoulder, was none other than my best friend, Jared. The guy who'd been my right-hand man for years. The guy I trusted with everything. I felt sick. What I didn't realize was that while I was out there risking my life, my wife and my best friend had been doing something I never thought possible. They'd been quietly turning my life into something unrecognizable. And that was just the beginning. If you're wondering what happens next, don't go anywhere, and trust me, it gets even more intense from here. Subscribe and let me know what you think in the comments below. Have you ever been betrayed like this? The next few days felt like a blur. The more I tried to focus on my duties, the more the images of Emily and Jared haunted me. Every moment, every interaction with my teammates felt distant, as if the world around me didn't matter anymore. I couldn't escape it. I spent hours staring at my phone, trying to make sense of what was happening. My mind kept racing. Why? How could she do this? But no matter how many times I replayed the situation, the truth was clear. I had been betrayed by the two people I trusted the most. It wasn't just the car. It wasn't even just the sale of our home's contents or the fact that she'd moved in with Jared. It was everything. It was the fact that I had been living in a world where trust meant nothing, where everything I thought was solid was actually a house of cards. But I wasn't about to let this slide. Not without getting some answers. So I did what I had to do. I pulled strings to get some leave from my commanding officer. I wasn't sure if they'd grant it. Military protocol was strict. But I wasn't going to let this go. Not anymore. A few weeks later, I was back home. The house felt like a ghost town. All the familiar smells, the little touches that made it feel like hours, were gone. What was left was cold and empty. But what struck me the hardest was the silence. No Emily. No Jared. I was determined to find them, to get to the truth. I drove to Jared's place first. His car was parked outside, and I could see the faint glow of a lamp in the window. But before I knocked, I paused. My hands clenched around the door handle. I was angry, furious. But something else was rising inside me. Something sharper. Something that felt like a plan. I wasn't going to just walk in there, guns blazing, screaming at them like a madman. No, I was going to take a different approach. I decided to wait. I didn't know how long it would take, but I needed to see how this would unfold. I had to gather everything. Every bit of evidence. Every moment that would tell me exactly what they'd done. It didn't take long. I saw them. They came out together, Emily and Jared, walking side by side, laughing, their arms brushing as if nothing had happened, as if my entire life had not just been shattered. But I stayed calm. I stayed in the shadows, watching them, studying their every move. What I saw next would be the catalyst for everything that came after. They didn't just leave. They went into Jared's car and drove to a nearby hotel. That was my opening. The next morning, I woke up with a feeling of determination I hadn't had in weeks. I had spent the night going over everything in my mind, piecing together all the events, all the little clues. I wasn't just going to confront them, I was going to expose them for what they had done. I was going to make sure they would regret ever thinking they could get away with this. I'd seen where they went last night. A hotel. Place I knew well. It was a little getaway spot they used to visit when we were together, before everything went wrong. It wasn't just a random choice, it was their place. I called my lawyer. I had to be smart about this. This couldn't just be about emotional revenge. I needed proof, something that would hold up in court. Something that would cost them. Over the next few days, I kept my distance. I didn't want them to get suspicious. I didn't go after them head-on. Instead, I dug deeper. I started investigating their finances, their phone records, anything I could find that would paint the full picture of their betrayal. What I uncovered shocked me even more. Jared wasn't just my best friend. He was in deep with Emily, way deeper than I ever imagined. They'd been making plans for months. Selling my car, moving into a place together. And the most infuriating thing of all? They had been using my money to fund their little affair. Couldn't believe it. I had worked hard to build my life, my career, everything I had. And they thought they could just steal it from me without consequences. But they didn't know who they were dealing with. The final piece of the puzzle came when I accessed Emily's email account. I had to be careful, but I knew she used the same password for everything. I won't lie, this was a risk, but it paid off. I found an email from Jared, discussing their plans for the future. How they were going to keep the secret for a little longer and then eventually move forward. I couldn't believe what I was reading. They weren't just taking advantage of me. They were planning to leave me with nothing. I was done being the victim. I spent the next few hours making phone calls, pulling together everything I had gathered. I was going to confront them, but not in the way they expected. This wasn't going to be some shouting match. This was going to be about control, about showing them that no matter what they did, they couldn't steal my future. I set up a meeting with both Emily and Jared. I called them separately, pretending like everything was normal. They were still too blind to realize what was coming. When the day arrived, I met them at a local cafe, just like we had met 100 times before. The atmosphere was casual, but I could feel the tension in the air. They thought I was just going to let this slide. I smiled. They still had no idea. The cafe was quiet. Too quiet. I sat at a table in the corner, watching them as they walked in. Emily looked nervous, her usual confident posture now replaced with a subtle unease. Jared, on the other hand, looked the same, smug, like nothing could touch him. He had no idea what was coming. They sat down across from me, their eyes still full of casual expectation, as if this was just another conversation about our broken friendship. But deep down, I knew they were both wondering why I'd called them here. "So, what's this all about?" Jared asked, his tone dismissive, like this was no big deal. I leaned forward, the calmness in my voice belying the storm that was about to hit. "We need to talk about what's been happening, Jared. About you and Emily." Emily's eyes widened, but she quickly masked it with a nervous laugh. "What are you talking about?" she asked, avoiding my gaze. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I pulled out my phone and slid it across the table. It was an email, one I had seen earlier that week. The subject line read, "Future plans." The contents of the email were enough to make their faces pale. "Are you really going to act like, I don't know, Emily? You and Jared have been planning this for months. Selling my car, moving into a place together, using my money to fund your little affair." For the first time since I'd walked in, Jared shifted uncomfortably. Emily's hands trembled slightly. I had them right where I wanted them. "Do you think I wouldn't find out?" I continued, my voice steady but full of quiet fury. "You thought I was too far away, that I wouldn't see the signs. But I've been paying attention every single detail. And now you're both going to pay for what you've done." Jared started to speak, but I raised my hand, stopping him mid-sentence. "No, Jared, this isn't your turn to speak. You've had your fun at my expense. Now it's my turn." I could see the panic starting to creep into their eyes. Emily opened her mouth to say something, but I wasn't interested in hearing any more lies. I had made my decision. It was time to end this once and for all. You're both going to be exposed, I said calmly. I've got everything, every email, every transaction, every text message. I've already contacted my lawyer, and I've taken legal action. The money you've stolen from me is going to be returned, and the courts will know exactly what you've done. Their faces drained of color as the reality of the situation set in. They were trapped. The evidence was undeniable, and they knew they couldn't talk their way out of this. But that wasn't even the best part. I smiled as I stood up to leave. You both had a chance to make things right. But now, you'll learn what happens when you betray someone who trusted you. As I walked out of the cafe, I felt a sense of satisfaction wash over me. I had taken control of the situation in a way they never saw coming. No shouting, no violence, just pure, calculated justice. And the best part? It wasn't over yet. When I left that cafe, I could feel the weight of everything lifting from my shoulders. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had control. I had done what I needed to do. Confronted them, shown them that I wasn't some fool to be taken advantage of. But that was just the beginning. I didn't need to shout. I didn't need to cause a scene. I had all the cards in my hand now. And with the help of my lawyer, I was about to make sure Emily and Jared understood exactly what would happen next. Over the next few days, things moved quickly. My lawyer filed a formal claim, and the investigation into their financials was already in motion. I had copies of all their transactions, emails, and even the joint bank account statements they thought I wouldn't check. The evidence was overwhelming. But the most satisfying part was knowing that Emily and Jared had no idea what was coming. They thought they had gotten away with it. They thought I was weak, that I wouldn't fight back. But I wasn't going to let them get off easy. They'd taken my trust, my money, and my life. Now it was time for them to lose everything. I watched as Jared tried to play the victim, calling me multiple times to apologize and beg me to reconsider. But I wasn't interested in his apologies. I'd seen enough of his lies. I didn't care about his excuses anymore. And Emily? She started to panic. She called me late one night asking to meet. I knew she was desperate, trying to salvage whatever she could from this mess. She probably thought I was still the same man she had manipulated for years. But this time I was the one in control. The next morning, I walked into her apartment, her new apartment with Jared, where they thought they could escape the fallout. When Emily opened the door, she looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her eyes were swollen, her hair a mess. "Can we talk?" she asked, voice shaky. I didn't waste time. "We've talked enough, Emily. You've had your chance. This time, it's my turn to talk." Her face fell, and she stepped back as I walked past her. "Do you really think you could just destroy everything we built, everything I worked for, and walk away with no consequences?" I asked. She tried to interrupt, but I raised my hand, silencing her. "No more lies. No more games." I pulled out the papers from my bag. The court orders, the bank statements, everything. "You're done, Emily," I said, my voice cold. "The courts have all the evidence. Jared's been investigated. Everything you've done, everything will be exposed." She looked at the papers, then at me, her expression a mixture of disbelief and fear. She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. "You thought you could leave me with nothing, didn't you?" I said, stepping closer to her. "You thought you could take my life and build a new one with my best friend. But here's the truth. You've lost everything. And I'm the one who's walking away with it all." The silence in the room was deafening. Emily just stood there, eyes wide, as the realization hit her. It was over, and for the first time I felt truly free. The days following my confrontation with Emily were tense. It wasn't over, not by a long shot. The legal process was still unfolding, but I could see the cracks starting to form in her carefully constructed facade. She was losing control, and that was something I could feel satisfaction in. But the best part was watching Jared try to salvage what was left of his pride. I hadn't heard from him in a few days, but that didn't last long. One morning, my phone rang. I glanced at the screen. It was Jared. I hadn't spoken to him since I walked into his apartment and laid everything bare. But now I had the upper hand. I picked up the phone. "Hey man," he said, trying to sound casual. "Look, I know this is a mess, but no." I cut him off. "You don't get to apologize, Jared. You don't get to make excuses anymore. You've done enough." There was a brief silence. Then he spoke again, his voice strained. "I didn't want things to go down like this, you know that, right? I never meant for any of this to happen." I leaned back in my chair, taking a deep breath. "You knew exactly what you were doing. You knew how much I trusted you, how much I relied on you. And you destroyed it all without hesitation, without a second thought." There was a long pause. Then Jared said something that caught me off guard. "Okay, maybe I messed up, but I'm still your friend, right? I mean, don't you want to talk about this? To fix things?" I laughed softly, shaking my head. "Fix things? You think you can fix this? You and Emily have ruined everything, and now you want to play the victim? I've got news for you, Jared. You're the last person I want to talk to." He didn't respond, and for a moment the line was silent. Finally, he spoke again, this time with more desperation in his voice. "I'm sorry, okay? I was wrong. But you can't take everything from me. I've got nothing left." I smiled coldly. "You lost everything the moment you betrayed me, Jared. You'll never have a place in my life again. Not after what you did." And with that, I hung up. I thought the phone call would bring some closure, but I was wrong. It didn't hit me until later that evening, when Emily came to my door. She stood there, looking vulnerable, her eyes red from crying. "I made a huge mistake," she whispered, her voice shaky. "I never meant for it to go this far. Please, can we just talk?" I could see the desperation in her face. But I wasn't interested in talking anymore. I had already made my decision. "I've given you every chance to come clean, Emily," I said firmly, my voice calm. "You didn't take it seriously. You didn't think I'd fight back. But here we are." She tried to interrupt, but I raised my hand, silencing her. "No more excuses. I'm done with you." She looked at me for a moment, the weight of my words hitting her. And for the first time, I saw a flicker of regret in her eyes. But it was too late. "You had your chance to make it right, Emily. You chose this path, and now you're going to have to live with the consequences." She didn't say anything else. She just stood there, looking broken, before she turned and walked away. I watched her leave, feeling a sense of finality wash over me. The fight wasn't over yet, but I was done with the games. It was time to move forward, and I was going to take everything I deserved. I didn't need her to apologize. I didn't need her to fix anything. What I needed was my life back, and that was exactly what I was going to get. By the time I saw Emily walk away, I felt something I hadn't in a long time: peace. It was a strange feeling, considering everything I'd just been through. But it wasn't just peace. I felt a sense of control. For the first time in months, I wasn't just a victim. I wasn't just the guy who had everything taken away from him. I was the one who held the cards now. And Emily and Jared? They were about to find out exactly how I was going to play them. The next few days went by quickly. Emily had stopped trying to reach me, and Jared had fallen silent, probably realizing he couldn't escape what was coming. But I wasn't going to wait any longer. I called my lawyer again, telling him that it was time to bring the final papers to court. I'd gathered everything I needed: the bank records, the emails, the testimonies, and even the photos of them together. It wasn't just about the money. It wasn't just about the betrayal. It was about justice. That afternoon, the court date was set. It wasn't going to be a long wait. The day of the hearing came faster than I anticipated. I walked into the courthouse with the kind of confidence I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't just showing up for myself. I was showing up for the life I had built, the life Emily and Jared thought they could tear down without consequence. As I entered the courtroom, I saw Emily sitting with her lawyer, looking uncomfortable and out of place. Jared was nowhere to be found, but I wasn't surprised. He didn't have the courage to face the music. The judge called the case, and as we sat down, I knew this was my moment. I had everything I needed: The evidence was solid. I wasn't going to lose this battle. Emily's lawyer stood up first, trying to argue that I was the one who had been negligent, that I had left her alone while I served overseas, that I hadn't been there for her. But I didn't flinch. I wasn't going to let her play the victim. When it was my turn, I stood and looked directly at the judge. I didn't need to shout. I didn't need to get emotional. I just needed to show him the truth. I laid out everything. The emails, the bank statements, the photos, the flights to Europe they had booked together. I even had the texts from Jared admitting he was taking money from the joint account. Every lie, every betrayal was there in black and white. Emily sat there, pale and silent, as the truth sank in. She had no defense. And Jared? He didn't even show up. The judge took his time, but I could see the verdict coming. He looked at Emily, who was now shaking in her seat. Then he turned to me and gave a small nod, as if to say, "You've won." In the end, the decision was clear. Everything I had lost was to be returned to me. The house, the car, the money. And as for Emily and Jared, the court ruled that they would be held accountable for their actions. I didn't need to hear the rest of the ruling. I knew this was over. As I walked out of the courtroom, I felt a strange sense of closure. It wasn't just about the possessions I was getting back. It wasn't about winning. It was about proving to myself that I could take back control, that no one could ever take advantage of me again. I took a deep breath and smiled. For the first time in a long while, I felt free. The day I walked out of the courthouse was the day everything changed. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. The weight that had been pressing on my chest for so long, the anger, the betrayal, the helplessness was finally gone. I had taken back control. I had gotten what I deserved. I knew this wasn't just about the money, the car, or even the house. It was about something deeper, something that had been taken from me without my consent. It was about my dignity, my self-respect, and my right to move forward with my life. As I sat in my car that day, waiting for the paperwork to be finalized, I couldn't help but smile. The last few months had been a whirlwind, but I was finally free. But the best part? I didn't just win in the courtroom, I had won my freedom. Emily and Jared had lost everything. And while Emily's lawyer tried to make one last desperate attempt to settle out of court, it was too late. The court had spoken, and they would be held accountable for everything. I wasn't about to forgive them, and I wasn't about to make peace with them. I had no intention of ever speaking to either of them again. A few weeks later, I received an unexpected call. It was from Emily. Her voice was shaking. "Can we talk?" she asked. I didn't hesitate. "No, there's nothing left to say." There was a long silence on the other end. I could hear her crying, but I didn't feel anything. No sympathy, no regret, just cold, hard truth. "You had your chance," I said firmly. "You both made your choices, and now you're going to have to live with them." The legal consequences were just the beginning. After everything was finalized, I walked away with my life back. The house, the car, the money, it was all restored to me. And more importantly, I had learned something important about myself. I wasn't the man I used to be. I wasn't the man who would sit idly by and let people take what was mine. I was a man who fought back, a man who took his life back. And no one was ever going to take that from me again. As for Emily and Jared, well, their lives fell apart just like they deserved. They both had to deal with the fallout of their actions, and it wasn't pretty. Jared lost his job, and Emily was left with nothing. The life they tried to build on the betrayal of others crumbled, piece by piece. I don't take pleasure in seeing them suffer, but I did take satisfaction in knowing that justice had been served. They couldn't take everything from me without consequences. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this journey with me, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories of triumph, revenge, and justice. What would you have done in my shoes? Leave a comment below and let's talk about it.